Hey everybody, it's me, Kaspar, here at PlatformCon 2025, and I'll talk about what building Canyon taught us about AI and platform engineering. First, what's Canyon? Well, Canyon is sort of our attempt to try to understand the trend of AI and the impact it will have and it already has on platform engineering. To be completely honest, I was a little bit of an LLM critic, and I used to go on walks with my father, who's a physicist, and that was around 12 months ago, and he was saying like, "Hey, Caspar, like this is the thing that we've always worked on, and all of our mathematical concepts have been hinting at this, and this will completely transform the world." And I was always thinking, well, I mean, yeah, sure, but in the domain that I work in, you need determinism, and you need to have things in neat, tidy order, and you cannot have things that work with like 95% accuracy, and most of the LLMs and AI models that we're seeing have an accuracy from less than 70%. There's so much strangeness going on, strange answers, lots of hallucinations. How can that ever actually transform the serious part of the industry? And then after a while, I said, okay, well, let's actually test this out and build something new and build this AI first. I was deeply convinced that it wasn't a good idea to just take some LLMs and throw this at APIs that we already had from backend orchestration. I was really of the opinion we needed to go first order principle, build it from scratch, really understand what it means to build AI first. And I've learned so much over those last months and weeks, and we've tested with over 300 users, and we continue to build this tool. And I want to share this experience because it allowed us to, learn a ton about where the industry is going. So with that, let's get started. The core hypothesis that I had, is that chat will become a or the dominant interface for platforms. Now, that sort of already made sense to me. I thought, hey, if there is a way to get things hallucination free, then this might be a super powerful thing, and it can do stuff on my behalf. And like, if that would be work, it would of course be something that would be absolutely game changing. But as I said, that fear of hallucination, that fear of non-determinism was something that was looming over me. I remember when I first used Cursor to run a scaffolding workflow, creating a React application or something, and really working and collaborating with the tool to build something great. And I thought, wow, this is amazing! Like, this allows me to so granularly actually retrieve things and default functions from, in this case, the World Wide Web. But what if we could actually restrict that to the capabilities of the platform? How would we actually do this? This was sort of the first feeling for me that, hey, there is something that we should take very, very serious. Now then, I thought, well, again, let's just build this, and let's try to make this as deterministic and structured as possible, and think about how would you apply this enterprise first. You have to know that everything that I do is always thinking about large scale, hundreds and thousands of developers. And so I really thought about, and we really reasoned and dissected, how would we build this with an organization of high security concerns and a couple hundred developers. And then the team and I went on to build a human in the loop confirmation flow that was focused on a combination of preset paths that the tool could invoke, a logic of actually assuming the role-based access control of the user to make sure that the tool can always only stay in the realm of what the user is allowed to do as well. Now, we've actually then tested this with different interfaces. You can see here we have an IDE extension. We also tested this with a dedicated UI, and we tested this in a Teams and Slack integration. And we gave different users different experiences to really learn what resonates best. So if we follow a flow through the system, the developer would be able to essentially express in natural language what they need. That request would be sent to Canyon. Canyon would forward that context to a model of the user's choice. We used mostly Gemini 2.5 Flash. We really learned that latency matters a lot, but because it was supposed to be enterprise first, we wanted to give the user the choice what model to use. If you've already procured Bedrock or any other model, then you would be able to just insert your keys and drive with that. Now, Canyon would take that, actually enrich that request from the developer. The model would act and take a decision what path to actually pick. Now, path is a set of deterministic calls to backend APIs. If we really want to structure this in simple ways, like it allows you to select something. A path could be, I want to scaffold a Spring Boot application, and then the Canyon system would be able to take the user intent, essentially inject variables, and then execute that path, and also queue paths in combination. Now, we have that proposed path. We then will send that back to the user, and this is the first human in the loop step. Ask the user, hey, this is what we would like to do. This will have edit or query or actually actual effects on the estate, will actually change something. Are you okay with that? The developer would then confirm. You could tune how much you want to confirm, and then Canyon would reach out, check the permissions, assume the user's permission set, and then perform the query or edit actions across the infrastructure and tools. So far, so good. This is how this roughly would look like, or looks like, in the IDE of the user. We can see here that we are proposing the deterministic path in this case, and then we ask for approval. And here you can auto-tune how much auto-approval you do. Maybe all of the query actions are okay, but the edit actions, we would want to have an advanced security protocol or authorize really every step of the way. We then had here the option to always swap to the CLI. We thought that this is really something that we looked and copied from WARP, the terminal option, where you could always toggle between natural language and CLI command to call the deterministic part of the system directly, and big focus on continuously visualizing the changes to the estate in form of a graph. Canyon is trained on the estate and on the policies, and that's very important. Because we're working in the enterprise world, want to make sure that if the developer requests a Postgres database, we're using the right policy framework, we're using the right permission set for the part of the estate. In order to guarantee this, we need to import the estate first, and we need to essentially build a graph representation of all of the different components of your estate. We then build paths, and then obviously, as I said, allow the user to choose their model. So what are examples? Well, an example could be an onboarding for a developer. You can say like, hey, I'm new here, can you help me? And the tool would be able to guide you through the account setup, through the connection of tools, and it would then actually help you to run your first deployment in a very interactive way. Another example would be remediating an incident across many tools. We've wired this up with incident management tool Rootly or with Datadog, and you would be able to ask things and it would be able to go off, query those third parties, identify where in the estate the problem is, and propose remediations, always in the realm of the policies set by the platform team. Now, we've tested the setup that I just showed you with over 300 users, and here is the feedback. Now, first, on chat as an interface. Practically unisono, this is the optimal interface for platform and far superior to any other. That is really the consistent pattern that we're seeing. The longer I've tested on this, the longer, and I've had a lot of those conversations myself, we really came to the conclusion, hey, this is more powerful than pretty much any other interface, because especially if you have low latency on the models, that really matters, like how far Are the models able to respond and go into a certain direction, propose something, then essentially maybe also optimize the flow continuously? It matters whether each run takes 10 seconds or 1 or 2 seconds. With something like Gemini 2.0 Flash, 2.5 Flash, you're so fast that you're always outperforming the user. If you would assume the user would use a user interface to find something, to click the search button, to reauthorize something, to go to Jira, look up the ticket, etc. You're so much faster, and chat, it's so much more conversational, it's so much more personal and direct. So I can't imagine I would have ever say this, but I believe ChatOps is actually the future interface for internal developer platforms. What I found particularly interesting is that there is a strong preference for not another UI. We're actually on the consolidation route now, and if it comes to interfaces, people want to use chat, use these systems where they are, and they are usually in the IDE. So 80% of testers preferred to use this from the IDE, from their usual chatbot interaction method, right where they are writing code. 15% wanted to use this in Teams and Slack. I found it particularly interesting that people remarked that they do not want to mix the human conversation with the AI conversation, and only 5% want an additional user interface. Now, as I said, latency is a thing, something that to really watch out. Has a drastic experience increase or decrease depending on the structure. This holds particularly true because sometimes a model will have to do something, and then it's taking a wrong route and it's proposing something. You say like, no, I didn't really mean this. And so if it just takes seconds, that's not a big deal. If it takes 10 seconds, that adds up relatively quickly. Now, the next thing that I found super interesting is what are the top use cases reported. Asked for how and where would you actually use this on a daily basis. The number one response was, we would like to actually, they call this switch the light on. We would want to understand what's running where. We have this this option to actually render a force-directed acyclic graph, and that thing of creating a graph representing my entire estate, seeing the cross dependency, seeing how things fit together, has been reported as the number one use case. Here again, nothing I could have possibly foreseen. Second, scaffolding of the correct resource. That's a huge difference, and that really actually matters here, this correctness of resource. People report that very often the wrong type of resource, or like an overly large resource, is provisioned, and so conversational interfaces can help the user pick the right horse for the right cause, especially in highly standardized estates. Pick the right default template, then create this, forward the right variables, make sure this is in the right zone, account, etc., and wire and bring this up. Third, going off and figuring out what status my resources have in collecting information, sort of in the direction of an SRE use case, really understanding the different components of my applications. How do they fit together? Are there any errors? How do we interpret the errors, etc.? And then fourth, I found that interesting as well, having something that explains people how to do things in the platform. That is sort of a documentation bot for my internal platform that really connects all of the different dots. The number one thing that we found is that backend is vital. What does that actually mean? If you're just providing an AI access to your Amazon account API, that doesn't really work. Why does it not really work? Well, because there are too many options, unclear estate structure, etc., etc. Let me give you an example. If you want to build an agent that helps the user book a flight, then you wouldn't give that agent access to like a dump of all of the possible flights that will go on the 26th of August in 2025. No, you would actually let that agent call and authenticate with the Google API. The Google API is specialized on actually doing that query, run that, and then return the load to the agent for interpretation. That is way, way more precise, deterministic, and efficient. Now, the same thing holds true actually if you want to run any CRUD operation on your infrastructure. This has to be policy checked. It has to be within the RBAC of the user. It has to be executed efficiently, and it has to be deterministic. You do not want an agent to guess how to configure your Postgres database in production. This should follow very, very clear rules. It's also just overwhelming. Like, these models get less accurate with the amount of information they have to pick from. They're really very similar to humans. So you need a deterministic backend API, which is a platform orchestrator, and it not only has to run this policy component, it also has to know what's going on everywhere at any point in time. So metadata should be stored in a central API, and it should really allow you to wire any MCP server to identify items across the different range of products. So again, these two things, mapping the estate that we have right now, connecting objects across the toolchain, and second, acting as a policy layer for net new stuff. Now, if you are building a platform at the moment, there is one key guidance that I want to give you that you should keep at the back of your head if you are designing a platform right now. I believe that there will be no one-size-fits-all DevOps platform agent that can do everything. We will probably stay in a world that remains modular. You'll have Jira or whatever for ticketing system. You'll have an incident management system. You have a portal. You have a security system like ChainGuard. You have GitLab for CI, whatever that might be. And you then have sort of a meta agent or like a chat interface from which you interact with all of those things. Canyon will be one of them, and it will be the one that is giving you the metadata across all of them, connecting the objects and acting as a policy layer to create net new stuff, really the orchestration component. So if you're choosing tools today, you need to make sure that every single tool uses or has well-documented APIs, that they offer an MCP server or whatever protocol is trending at the time of you watching this video. And you then really aggregate all of those different tools in one interface and embed that right in the user's workflow, probably in their IDE. In general, I believe you can think of agents like users with special needs. They need to be able to look up stuff in a certain format. They need to be able to authenticate. They need to be able to understand what's going on. And that really should help you design platforms now and in the future. Okay, so what will we do next? Well, we will actually do exactly that. We'll turn to the backend, and we want to build a platform orchestrator for Canyon that is super easy to integrate into your brownfield estate, that is probably HCL first, that can deal with any compute, and that allows you to build that policy and mapping framework of your estate and allow your human and AI agent users to act on this securely, fast, and predictable. Thank you so much for listening to my talk here at PlatformCon 2025. I wish you all the best on your platform engineering journey. See you somewhere in the world of platform engineering.